I am absolutely dedicated to giving our children generational privilege. I have a very simple responsibility. I'm not trying at all to make my children as if they are equal to all of society. I'm not asking who the average boy or girl is in society and say, I want to make sure my kids don't get any more advantages than that kid. That's the opposite of an Abrahamic mindset.
Yeah.
I want to give my kids as many advantages as possible, and I want you to give your kids as many advantages as possible. Like, that's your job.
Hi, welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined once more with my lovely wife, April. How's it going, April?
Hello.
She's been very busy, just matriarching. Matriarching there, matriarching here, all over the place. So
All over the place.
got baby delivered, got grandma through surgery, got grandkids.
Yep.
Lots of things. Okay.
Lots of
So
things.
in the midst of all of that, I'm pulling you into another podcast where I need to get your opinion on something that I know
Okay.
that you will tell me, like there's some, I'm sure you'll have a reaction. So I'm really excited to find out what it is.
Great.
Should we seek to make the family name famous? Okay.
Mm.
So this is a section of the book that I'm writing and just kind of wrestling with through Genesis 12, 1 through 3. And in verse 2, God says something to Abraham. He says, I will make your name famous, or I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. And when Abraham heard that, was he like, oh, yes, or what? Like, so that's what we're trying to figure out. Like, why would God promise that to Abram? And what does that have to do with us? Is that a desire we should have? So that's what I wrote down here. So I will read this to you and then love to get your thoughts on this.
Okay.
Okay. Is it biblical to seek fame? In an era where millions chase celebrity status through social media, hoping to fill an inner void, influencer has become Gen Z's top career aspiration. Many Christian leaders counter this fame-obsessed culture, pointing to 1 Thessalonians 4:11's call to aspire to live a quiet life. The YWAM song Missionary Anthem captures this sentiment. Quote, I will preach the gospel, die, and be forgotten as long as you get the glory. This feels like a vital corrective to a generation enamored with self-promotion. Yet God's promise to Abram in Genesis 12:2 to make his name great as a blessing complicates the picture. When is fame a blessing, and when does it become a curse? A family with a patriarch whose name carries a widespread positive reputation enjoys unique advantages. Doors open for children and grandchildren that remain closed to others. A renowned family name amplifies influence, extending a household's impact across generations and communities. Like wealth, fame is a tool. In the hands of the wise, it blesses. In the hands of the unprepared, it destroys, much like lottery winnings often ruin the unprepared. Abraham exemplifies how to wield fame without succumbing to pride or corruption. His story reveals a narrow path where a great name serves God's purposes, blessing others rather than glorifying self. For a family to become a ruling household in God's design, we must learn from Abraham to steward fame humbly and purposefully. By walking this path, our families can maximize their blessings, leaving a legacy of impact for generations to come. So that's kind of me trying to tease out kind of more the theology, philosophy of fame. And then the tool that I like to just append a tool to all of these things to try and make it practical. The humble pursuit of patriarchal fame. 1 Peter 5:6 says, humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you. And in Psalm 112:6 says, surely the righteous will never be shaken. They will be remembered forever. So fame, like wealth, is a dangerous pursuit when sought for its own sake. Yet when it emerges as a byproduct of blessing others, it becomes a powerful tool for a family called to godly influence. Solomon observed Proverbs 22 and 29, a man skilled in his work will stand before kings, not obscure men. Our goal should be to earn only the renown our work merits, neither amplifying mediocrity nor hiding excellence. It's a tragedy when world-class work blesses only a few due to lack of exposure, just as it's harmful when average work is prematurely celebrated. The healthiest fame to pursue is within your own home. Strive to be renowned among your family by serving them with such devotion that your reputation shines in their eyes. If you pour out abundant blessing on your children and grandchildren, God willing, your name will echo through future generations. But what about an Abrahamic renown, where your family's blessing overflows to others? For a ruling household, this is likely to happen. If not in your lifetime, then in your descendants. Multi-generational families create such extraordinary value that their name naturally gains influence beyond the home. Here are 4 phases to steward this renown wisely. Phase 1, cultivate sober judgment. Paul urges, quote, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think with sober judgment. That's from Romans 12:3. In an age of inflated self-esteem and exaggerated praise, a ruling household must anchor itself in truth. Patriarchs should honestly assess their family's work, saying, this is excellent for sharing with loved ones, but it's not yet ready for a wider audience. Keep refining it. Honest feedback builds character and protects against pride. Phase 2, focus on excellence, not exposure. Quote, let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. Proverbs 27:2. Prioritize improving your work's quality and let its reach grow organically. Shameless self-promotion risks corrupting the soul, but trusting God's timing allows your influence to expand naturally as others share your contributions. Phase 3, value family over flattery. As strangers begin to praise your work, guard against believing your own hype. Surround yourself with a truth-telling family who knows your flaws and strengths. In a culture addicted to likes and fleeting affirmation, a multi-generational family grounds you, shielding your soul from the dopamine-driven chase for online approval. And then lastly, phase 4, redirect the spotlight. When renown comes, use it to lift up others. Shine the spotlight on those who deserve recognition, especially your family, and above all, give glory to God. As Paul reminds us, quote, what do you have that you did not receive? 1 Corinthians 4:7. Renown also grants the privilege of opening doors for your children. Solomon wrote, quote, the glory of children is their fathers. Proverbs 17:6, describing how a father's reputation equips his family with generational advantages. This is not about making children famous prematurely, but about leveraging your influence to give them opportunity to carry the family's legacy further. By walking these phases, a family can steward renown as a tool for blessing. So just want to kind of get my hands around that whole topic. I'm curious what of that stood out to you?
Well, I like how kind of like the base of that is if the Lord wills it, then may it be so. So with anything. So if it's his will to make somebody famous, then it makes sense that that's what would happen. But to make it becoming famous in and of itself, the goal, I think that has like a lot of trapdoors in it. I remember a family story of my generations. There was a family farm that has been in our family since the Revolutionary War. It was a land grant, and the last name was Schofield. So Schofield Farm for generations, and it was hundreds and hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 acres. I don't remember the numbers. And over the generations, a parcel here and a parcel there were sold off before my lifetime. A large chunk got sold off to housing developments. My mom would tell me that, that bus route, when you get on the bus and you go through that neighborhood, that's your family's land. I had such a hard time being attached to that idea. Like, what? I don't understand. I don't understand what you're saying. And then, of course, as I got older, I was like, oh, yeah, because that's really close to my grandparents' house. So that used to be part of the farm. Wow, that's crazy. And I said, why is it called whatever it was called? Why isn't it called Schofield Estates or Schofield something? And she said that her mother, my grandmother, thought it was very haughty to have your name on something like that. And so there is nothing left in that town that has the name Schofield on it. And I really wrestled with that over the years because I really, really appreciate her sentiment. And I think it was coming from a desire to be humble. But there is this element of those of us who are left behind where
Yeah.
the farm is a memory. It's a story. It's not an experience we had. It's not something that we viscerally have, experiential memories of that we can pass on to our children. It's like the family stories, and that's
Yes.
it. And now you go there and it's a bunch of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And so how it would have been cool for me to be able to drive my kids through this neighborhood and say, look, this is Schofield Farm Estates or something. There's nothing to show my
Yeah.
kids. So
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means, or I don't know how to.
That's a really, really, really good illustration. I like that point because I think about that a lot as well. Like, there's sort of two sides to this, at least, that I wrestle with. In our town right now, the coffee shop, they have a wall of people's last names that have helped the coffee shop. And I was just walking through an old church in town. They have like a patio, and on the patio stones, and I don't know how old the patio is, but it's probably pretty old. There's probably like 50 to 100 last names. Those of you guys listening to this, how would you feel about going on a tour right now? Someone say, "Hey, I want to show you the legacy of your great great grandparents," and you would go across this town and see 4 or 5 different places where your last name is stamped on different things. Yes, you can do it for the renown of like this generation, which I think feels a little icky. Like, let's put our name on everything. Like your grandmother probably. I'm assuming that's how she was thinking of it. It's like,
Yeah.
like this seems like my reputation is actually going to take a hit because I'm one of those kinds of people that's trying to become haughty or whatever. But the real reason to put your name in stone, like in some place, whether it's a memorial stone in a cemetery, because like this missionary anthem that I made reference to, I would love to just die and be forgotten.
Mm.
I just did a whole video, a really famous podcaster named Stephen Bartlett. He was in a conversation with Eric Weinstein, and Eric Weinstein said, "Do you care if anyone says your name 4 generations from now?" And he said, "Well, you're probably asking the wrong person because I don't care at all about legacy because I'm going to be dead." That's the problem. They're
Yeah.
framing it as an individual question. And this is why I think when Abraham heard God say, "I'm going to make your name famous," I don't think that Abraham thought, wow, when I'm 120 years old, there's going to be all these people who are going to know who I am. And I'm going to be able to just swell up with pride because how awesome I am and feel so good about myself. I don't think that's what he was thinking.
Yeah.
I think what he was thinking is my great, great, great grandchildren are going to get a powerful deposit from my generation into their lives because of a relationship that I've established with God in my generation. That's, I think, what they were. I think that he was excited about the legacy for them. And so when Stephen Bartlett, who's not married, has at this point no intention of having children, doesn't care if anybody says his name in 4 generations, these YWAM missionaries who say, "I just want to die and be forgotten." That sounds so selfless. But if you have children, and for most of you guys listening to this, you're probably parents of children, there is a role to be played for creating a family story that will root your generations. Because when I think about going on that tour, like if somebody were to take me on a tour, and I've talked to people who've had this experience, they're like, "Yeah, my great great grandfather was a senator of the United States. And here's the book he wrote, here's the legislation he passed." Those kids, they think differently about their family and about their lives. They see themselves as a part of a continuous family line or a story. But a lot of times, the reason why we fail to do that or feel that or give that to our children or grandchildren is because we've never done anything worthy of renown. And again, I'm not excited about like trying to get renown. I am saying that if there are opportunities where that is organically happening, like exactly what happened with your grandmother, we could have put our name on that thing. I think that you should really consider not what is in your best interest in your generation, but what is in the best interest of your great grandchildren at that moment. And like you said, what would it have done to you to see an entire neighborhood called Schofield Farm
Mhm.
I think you would take all of our kids through that. Like that would
Yeah.
just be a part of the journey of our family line. Hey guys, this 1,000 acres came from our family in the Revolutionary War. Yeah, we lost control of it and now it's a part of the subdivision. But look, like you can literally drive through the streets where your great 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 grandparents used to till the fields of this
Yeah.
farm. Like that's I think that does something to a kid. I don't know what your thoughts are there, but that seems like the positive side of this.
Yes. I agree because on the other side of town, the same town, is the cemetery where those grandparents are buried, and my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents, and both sides of my own grandparents are buried. And at the entrance of that cemetery, there is, like, a stone fence, and there's a plaque on the stone fence, and there are a list of 4 names, and it's at the top, it says trustees, and then there's a list of 4 names, and one of them is Minor Schofield, and that was my great-grandfather. And so I know that he was a trustee, and I know that he had something to do with the cemetery, and that is pretty cool. And then also, I would say downtown Columbus, my other side of my family, they established the first hardware store in Columbus back in the late 1800s, mid 1800s. And there is still to this day on the sidewalk. Right now, that area of town's horrible. It's really bad. We went there and it's like, oh, this is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But the building that's was originally there is still there. And on the sidewalk in front of it, it says Sealy Hardware.
Hmm.
So it says it in the sidewalk. It's really crazy.
Sealy being your maiden name, your dad's
Yeah, my
family
maiden
name.
name. So the other side of my family. It's maybe a little unique that I have a place I can go with on both sides of my family that I can point to and say, like, look, wow, there is this bit of a connection to this place, this land, even if it's not what it was and it's not something that we're connected to currently. It's just like, wow, that is, we know you are the descendants of people that
Yeah.
did this, that put this sign here. So it does do something to you.
Yeah.
I knew as a kid that that was part of my story, and I think it does help you at least think bigger than yourself. That maybe those ancestors were thinking about you in some way. It just an idea of the great grandchildren when they were establishing their life. I think it does do something too.
Yeah.
I am one
I
of
think
those.
it feels like one of the things it does is it sort of says these people that lived these lives added value to the world. It may have been very simple,
Yes.
trustee of a cemetery, hardware store founder, but it's like, no, they did something that added value. And you would kind of think that if you did something to add value to the world, maybe there would be a reason for people to remember that. And again, we're talking about this all in the context of not that the dead person is somehow getting a benefit. I don't know if that's true in a kingdom of God. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a whole different calculation for what happens in the kingdom. But what happens here in terms of our family identities is it's useful for, because I think that as a child, one of the questions the child's going to be constantly asking is, why should I add value to the world? Maybe I should just spend
Right.
my life doing stuff that I want to do.
Right.
But if you were a part of a family line that actually established some really long lasting things, enough to have their
Mhm.
name in documents or their name in stone on plaques, you kind of get the sense that, okay, no, there's not only did my family add a lot of value and I'm inheriting that, but I could also continue to contribute to that and it will impact my future generations. I think that's the piece of it that's really significant. And you want to be careful that that story that's told is full. And this is why I think maybe one application to all of this is if you're thinking about something like writing a family book, like if you're thinking about ways to really cement the family's legacy in some longer lasting way than just a list of emails. I don't know what we're going to have.
Right.
Everything we do is electronic these days.
Yeah.
It's just going to disappear into the ether. But
Yeah.
man, it's useful. Like, please think about those future generations when you're thinking about this topic. Don't just think about yourself, like what's going to build me up, or maybe I'll be humble and not have to worry about that. If you're having children, there's a reason. I think that can really inspire your generations. Another piece of this that I got into a little bit in this essay that I really am trying to understand about this whole process is this idea of opening doors for your kids. I struggle a lot with this. It's interesting today. We have this obsession with privilege. right? There was this season that's kind of ending where there was a constant conversation around white privilege, or that privilege was primarily a racial or maybe a gender-based thing. I am absolutely dedicated to giving our children generational privilege. I have a very simple responsibility. I'm not trying at all to make my children as if they are equal to all of society. I'm not asking who the average, boy or girl is in society and say, I want to make sure my kids don't get any more advantages than that kid.
Mm,
That's the opposite of an Abrahamic mindset.
yeah.
I want to give my kids as many advantages as possible, and I want you to give your kids as many advantages as possible. Anybody listening to this, like, that's your job. Like, if Abraham thought that he could give no advantages to Isaac, could pass nothing on to his descendants, like if you read the end of Genesis, it's fascinating what Jacob is doing. He's just passing on, to his 12 sons everything, like everything he has. And this is a very continuous theme all the way through the Bible. Generational blessing is so important because it's
Yeah.
what motivates every generation to maximize their influence and maximize giving their children things that really will cause society itself to go to be lifted up. I think
Yeah.
one of the worst things you could ever do for society is a race to the bottom. And so I'm not just trying to give my kids lots of generational blessing. I'm trying to convince hundreds and thousands of other families to do this for their children. This is
Yeah.
not a zero-sum game. It's not like if we win, you lose. I want all of us to win. I want every generation to get better and better. And we can do this, but you have to decide to give that generational, you have to be okay. You can't have some kind of weird hang up. You can't have some kind of mindset that says, I want to make sure my kids suffer like the average, like there's enough suffering in the world. God will make sure your kids suffer. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. What you
Right.
need to do is make sure that, and I'm not talking about spoiling your kids either. This all needs to be done in wisdom, right? There's lots of caveats
Right.
we could make, but the point is that your ceiling needs to be your children's floor. And there's a basic pact that exists between one generation and another generation. That pact is, I'm trying to make your life better. And one of the worst things that's happening right now, and one of the greatest critiques of the previous generation, is that they pillaged society and they left less for their children. That is such an indictment on an entire generation that thought that way. And so what's really odd in one sense is that we now have a generation that deeply resents how their inheritance was pillaged by their parents, but then turns around and has an ideology that says we want equality, not privilege. These things are diametrically opposed ideas. And so we have to be okay with accumulating generational privilege, passing it on to our children in appropriate ways, making sure there's a whole essay we're going to get into, because the last part of this blessing is that you are blessed not for yourself, but to be a blessing to other families. The reason why you're giving your children generational blessing is not so they can, live in a gated community and look down their noses at the rest of the world suffering. It's so that they can maximize their influence for the kingdom of God. We're going to get into that in kind of the next essay. But yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are about this idea of passing on generational blessing, and this as a reason for accumulating some level of renown in a generation. Hey, it's Jeremy. After I started my first successful business, I hit a season I didn't expect. The work was going well, the income was solid, but I started to feel a little lost. Embarrassingly, I even thought about buying a sports car. Yeah, really lost. What got me back on track wasn't a strategy or a book. It was a few brothers, men who were building businesses and families and saw both as part of the same mission. That community helped recenter me, sharpen me, and remind me what this was all for. That's why we created Integrated, a mastermind for fathers who own businesses and want to grow both their company and their family at the same time. We meet twice a year, stay connected in between, and push each other to build something that lasts. If that's what you've been missing, apply now at familyteams.com/integrated.
Yeah. Well, I have two thoughts. One of them is it kind of reminds me of, if you're talking about what you're passing on to your kids is like connections with
Yeah.
people, or
Yeah,
is
that's
Jordan Peterson has a thing that says, he says, raise your kids to be people that others will want to introduce to the world. Raising your children in such a way that they are the kind of person that people would want to be around or want to introduce, but then also that you have those people in your life that are in a position that they would want to interact with your child who has become an adult. I think that that's a really profound way to carry things into the next generation through connections that the parents had with each other And now we're allowing those connections to continue or extend into the next generation, and looking out for each other's kids, adult children who are having experiences, hosting them, giving them an introduction that they might need to do the next thing that they're about. I think that that's a really interesting component. But then I also think I heard this quote recently that in Judaism, there is no such thing as a vow of poverty like some Christians have. And the reason is because if you have nothing, then you have nothing to give. The person was kind of unpacking this idea that if you accumulate wealth, or if you establish assets, or if you work hard to expand on what you have, which, by the way, are all scriptural principles, then, and you use them to better the world, to help others, to establish something in society that is helping others level up or something like that. These are all things that we can use to help our children into the next generation.
Yeah, I think so. I hope you guys hear the way we're trying to frame this, because I think that there are these destructive mindsets that get situated inside of Christianity that suggest that we need to intentionally throttle lots of elements of our family, and that's sort of a statement of, or a act of humility. And I think as mothers and fathers, we have to be very careful that what we're not inadvertently doing is throttling the next generation or 2 or 3 generations inheritance. We got to distinguish between these things. And I do think there are times where God's like, hey, you need to live in obscurity, take a big step back. Like you're becoming intoxicated by your own like reputation, or like there are lots of times where the right move is to humble yourself. But I think the framing of this topic in general starts here in Genesis 12 with God saying to Abraham, I'm going to do this for you. And you don't have to do this for yourself. You don't have to pursue this, but this is a blessing. And it was a blessing. It has been a blessing for Abraham and his family to have gotten that renown. It's given, countless millions of Jewish people a stronger identity as a family, and has allowed them to achieve more and to bless the world more. And we can all do that in our own family lines if we follow and ask the Lord and receive those kinds of blessings from him as well. But, to each his own. I don't know what God's got in mind for your story or my story. It's in his hands, thank goodness. But I think it's important for us to have the right mindset when it comes to like how to think about this stuff. So I've got still lots of questions and tensions around this topic, but I wanted to unpack kind of where I'm at right now and how I've been thinking about this. So thanks, April, for processing this with me.
Of course.
Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.